Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're diving straight into the exact data-backed insights you need to totally elevate your spring garden. We're done guessing, right? We're going to break down the entire tulip life cycle together. We're talking expert-level hacks and deep dives into horticultural data that will absolutely take your blooms from just good to completely stunning.
Okay, let's kick things off with a scenario that, well, let's be honest, most of us veteran gardeners have faced just because life gets busy. Picture this, you're finally cleaning out the shed. The temp has already dropped, you've had that first frost, and boom, you find a forgotten bag of tulip bulbs. It's the ultimate procrastinator's confession, and your immediate thought is probably, man, did I just waste my money? Is it genuinely too late?
Well, the answer is a massive, resounding no. Seriously, please do not toss those bulbs out. There's this huge misconception that planting season just slams shut the second frost hits. But actually, tulips are cool season plants. Biologically, they literally require a period of cold dormancy, a process called vernalization, just to develop the flowers locked inside the bulb. And here's the really incredible part. They produce natural antifreeze sugars to stop their cells from bursting in the freezing cold. It's wild science. If you plant them too early when the soil is still warm, they might actually send up premature shoots and just totally waste all that spring energy.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're covering 1. The perfect bulb foundation. 2. Soil, spacing, and drainage. 3. Conquering the deep freeze. 4. Defeating pathogens and pests. And 5. Essential post-bloom care. This quick rundown is going to make sure we build a rock-solid base and protect that floral investment.
Let's jump right into section 1, the perfect bulb foundation. Because honestly, everything, and I mean absolutely everything, begins with what you grab off the shelf at the nursery.
You could have the best soil in the world, but if your foundation is weak, your blooms are going to be weak too. A truly healthy bulb should feel surprisingly heavy for its size. That tells us it's still holding on to vital moisture. It needs to feel firm, kind of like a fresh onion, and have that intact, papery brown skin called a tunic. On the flip side, you want to avoid anything soft, squishy, or hollow. That's a massive red flag for severe dehydration or rot. Now, a tiny bit of white surface dust, totally fine, but a heavy blue or green mold, yeah, that means the bulb is completely shot.
Moving on to section 2, soil, spacing, and drainage. Once you've got that perfect, healthy bulb, you've got to prep its new home. And for this, we can actually look to Bulgarian horticultural experts for a pretty incredible hack. See, because tulips originated in the dry steppes and mountain regions of Central Asia, they are total divas when it comes to moisture. They absolutely refuse to have soggy feet. So, to mimic that natural habitat, experts say you should create a 3 to 5 centimeter sand bed right underneath the bulbs. It acts as this perfect fail-safe drainage layer. Planting in pots? Go for a 3-to-1 ratio of potting soil to sand. Oh, and for pure aesthetics, always plant them in clusters of at least 10. Scattering a single tulip here and there is kind of missing the point. Group them together to get that massive show-stopping pop of spring color.
Now, the magic number for planting is 6, specifically 6 to 8 inches deep. Depth is totally your quiet winner here. A great universal rule of thumb is to plant bulbs 3 times as deep as they are tall. Hitting that specific 6 to 8 inch depth acts like a cozy little blanket, perfectly insulating the bulb from crazy temperature swings. Plus, as a nice little bonus, it makes it way harder for hungry animals to dig them up.
All right, section 3, conquering the deep freeze. Let's tackle that stressful late-season planting scenario when winter is closing in fast.
You see, there's a massive difference between a first frost and a true bone-chilling deep freeze. A first frost really just means the air temp dipped below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Sure, it might leave your lawn looking all sparkly and the top layer of dirt a bit crusty, but because soil has a high thermal mass, the earth deep underneath is actually still perfectly warm and totally workable. A solid freeze, though? That's when winter is truly settled in for weeks and your shovel literally bounces right off the dirt, making it totally impossible to hit that crucial 6-inch depth.
So, if your soil is just a bit crusty from a frost, here is your game plan. First, just break right through that thin top crust with a sturdy shovel. Dig down to your 6 to 8 inch sweet spot and position the bulb with the pointy side up. Then, backfill the soil and give it one really thorough watering. This just helps remove any weird air pockets. Finally, tuck it in with a nice, thick 2 to 3 inch blanket of mulch. That mulch is crucial because it stabilizes the soil temperature and stops frost heaving. And frost heaving is exactly as dramatic as it sounds. It's when the freezing and thawing ground literally spits your bulb right back out of the earth. No thank you.
But wait, what if you step outside and the ground is truly frozen solid? First rule, do not bring those bulbs inside your warm house to wait it out. Seriously, they will dry out and die. Instead, try this incredibly clever workaround that is honestly hard to believe works so well, the pot-in-pot method. Just fill a container, make sure it has drainage holes, with fresh potting soil, plant your bulbs at that exact same 6 to 8 inch depth, and store the whole thing in an unheated garage or shed. It perfectly mimics the cold temps of the winter ground, but keeps them totally safe from solid outdoor ice. Then, once you spot those little green tips in the spring, just move the pot right out to a sunny porch.
Moving right along to Section 4, defeating pathogens and pests. Because even with perfect winter care, we've still got to actively defend our gardens against invisible fungal enemies and very hungry wildlife. Commercial bulb experts usually point out 3 main fungal threats. But don't worry, we don't need to get bogged down in a botany textbook to beat them. The first one is commonly called tulip fire, which shows up as this nasty gray mold and scorched-looking foliage. You can easily dodge it by rotating your crops and avoiding overhead watering. Second is root rot, which leaves these reddish-brown lesions. Now this right here is exactly why we were hammering on about proper drainage earlier. And the third is basal rot, which causes a dry, browning rot at the base. You can stop that one in its tracks just by making sure your bulbs have good ventilation and storage. The main takeaway here? Basic hygiene, smart crop rotation, and really well-drained soil will keep the diseases away.
That being said, it is absolutely vital that you don't confuse a fungal disease with just severe waterlogging. Believe me, if your bulbs are drowning, you're gonna know. You can spot water damage by a super sour, unmistakable fermentation smell. Yeah, it's gross. And outer scales that have turned completely translucent because the cells just collapsed. Let me say it again, drainage is absolutely everything for these guys.
Okay, now for the visible pests. To squirrels, voles, and rodents, a freshly planted tulip bed literally just looks like an expensive, all-you-can-eat underground buffet. To shut that down, you want to use a brilliant physical barrier. Grab some fine wire mesh and shape it into a 15-centimeter high basket right inside your planting hole. Pop your bulbs in, backfill the soil, and boom, you've basically just built a mini bank vault against underground pests.
And that brings us to Section 5, Essential Post-Bloom Care. Let's look at what we actually need to do when those glorious spring colors inevitably start to fade.
You know, as the saying goes, gardening is a journey of patience and working with nature's timeline. If you planted your bulbs pretty late, like, say, deep into December, they might pop up slightly later in the spring than your neighbor's tulips. And you know what? That is perfectly normal. They're just finishing up their root development underground, and they will absolutely catch up. So just embrace that natural cycle.
But to make sure that bulb stores maximum energy for next year, you'll want to follow these exact steps. First off, chop off those fading blooms right away, so the plant doesn't waste precious energy trying to produce seeds. Second, and listen closely because cutting the green leaves is literally the #1 mistake people make, absolutely leave the green foliage alone until it dies and turns yellow completely on its own. Those leaves are basically tiny solar panels, actively recharging the bulb underground. Third, dig the bulbs up and safely store them in a box of dry sand over the summer just to protect them from the humidity. And finally, replant them come September with a really good dose of mineral fertilizer.
So, armed with the secrets of sand drainage, late-season planting hacks, deep freeze survival tactics, and how to permanently ban pests from the underground buffet, you are no longer just guessing out there. You've got the exact data you need. So, I'm going to leave you with this question. Will you leave next spring's bloom to chance, or will you engineer your own tulip success? It is time to take complete control of your garden's legacy. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and hey, happy planting!